Well, I'm very pleased to join Excello Law, Julie Mogan and George Bisnought. We're going to be talking about a few things today. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about the business itself, so we can learn more about it. It is different. I can tell that from doing my research in advance. Then we're going to talk about your love of Liverpool, and then we're going to talk about hospitality, because you have a number of clients there, and it's a particularly important sector at the moment. And then we're going to finish by talking about the festive season. Well, let me go to you, George, first. Just do introduce yourself and tell us a bit about why you set up Excello Law in 2009.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Simon. I'm George Bisnought. I'm the founder and CEO of Excello Law. We're often described, Simon, as a disruptor or a new model law firm. By way of a little bit of background, my parents came over to this country, part of the Windrush generation. Of course, they instilled in me a strong work ethic, but typical of West Indian parents, my father wanted me to be either a doctor or a lawyer. Fortunately for me, I fell in love with the academic study of law, but unfortunately, I found when I qualified as a solicitor that I didn't enjoy the framework or structure within which law firms practice, often called the traditional law firm model. My research revealed that a lot of lawyers felt the same. Often we talk about, amongst ourselves, the lawyers, about the office politics, the lack of flexibility, glass ceiling, the sort of billing targets, and not really being adequately rewarded for your efforts. I also worked in industry for a number of years, so was a consumer of legal services. And like many clients, I found myself complaining about issues around quality, accessibility, and cost. So on reflection, this sort of set me on a course to create my own law firm in 2009, in an attempt to sort of resolve the issues felt by lawyers and both clients in order to try and drive change in the profession. I think one of the first things we did, which is interesting for today, is that in 2009, we allowed our lawyers to work remotely by exploiting technology. And one of the other things that we do as a practice is we don't target our lawyers. I think targets create bad behaviours, and they're very much at the core of the traditional law firm model. So we don't target our lawyers, which enables them to have a more, I would say, honest and open conversation with clients about the value proposition. So, we've grown since 2009. We are a practice of 150 people in total. We've won a number of awards. We've built a reputation for recruiting the best people. And I think for us, personally for me, the desire is to enable those people to flourish in the Excello Law brand. I'm a firm believer, and we have it on the website, that happy lawyers make happy clients. So that's a little bit of background, Simon, on the firm. I'm sure with further questions.
That's really good, and thank you for that introduction, George. Julie, you didn't join at the beginning, I don't think.
Not at the beginning of Liverpool, anyway. So I was practicing in Liverpool and Chester, and for a number of reasons, I left another business. I took a break, and I was pretty determined that this is going to be my last career move, so I needed to get it absolutely right. And I was thinking of setting up my own firm again. I'd done that once with other people, and I very much had a vision as to how we wanted to deliver the services to clients, to be different, to be client. I know we all say it, but to be client focused. You know, at my age and the age of the others around us, we've built long-standing, very valuable relationships, and I wanted to engage with those clients properly, in a friendly and in a manner that served them best, really. So I was looking to do it all again. And then I met George and heard about Excello. Was really impressed because it fitted my vision for the future. And the absolute total commitment. I'd spoken to other law firms. I'd been in this job a long time, so I'd been approached by the other law firms that you would expect to go and take up a partnership role there, and it didn't turn me on at all because of the reasons George has mentioned: the targets, the politics, the hierarchy. I've been there, done that, got that T-shirt. So when I first met George, I'd never heard of Excello, and I also met Joe, the commercial director, and just listening to them, speaking to other lawyers that were there, it was one of the phrases I hear constantly is it's refreshing. It is disruptive, and I like being disruptive, so that suited me as well. And I decided to join, and one of the other main reasons was the commitment to Liverpool. Myself and my colleagues who were in Liverpool have all been there practicing for 30 plus years, and we built relationships there. Some of the firms in this same model just weren't interested in Liverpool, really. So that was a real plus for me. And not look back. It's been brilliant.
Good, excellent. And let me ask George, before we go on to talk about Liverpool, two points that strike me. First of all, in terms of diversity, doing my research around Excello law, quite particularly for a law firm, quite diverse in terms of ethnicity and gender and age and things. Is that deliberate, and do you work at that as a company? And then secondly, I also wanted to ask you about expansion. I mean, you're obviously in London, you're in Liverpool, Leeds, Birmingham. Where will it end? So diversity and expansion are my two issues.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you couldn't tell, I'm black, Simon. So, diversity is something that I've lived with in one sense from the moment I was born. So, I entered the profession at a time which was very, if I can use the terms, white and middle class, Oxbridge. And I felt like a square peg in a round hole. And I have to say that is one of the driving forces as well. For me personally, I moved from private practice, as I mentioned, into industry quite quickly after qualification. Yeah. And I really enjoyed that experience and the diversity and different types of people that you meet, having worked in for a venture capital company, and then also in the software industry. And I was GC on a global basis. So that entailed meeting lots of different people in different nations. But yeah, I mean, to the point, it very much is a driver for us. We run a flat structure. There isn't a partnership model. As you say, there are lots of different people, lots of different shades and colours, male, female. We very much have an open door policy. For me, it's about the delivery. Not what you look like and sound like. That's the key for me, and I know that's the key for our clients. So far as growth is concerned, we have ambitions to continue to grow, to become a national brand. As you said, we presently have 8 offices across the country, and the plan is, I mean, we've recently opened in Manchester a few weeks ago, and the plan is to continue that growth. It's very much part of the ethos. We see that there's a great opportunity for a firm like Excello Law. I think we offer a lot to both lawyers and also clients. And as long as we can continue to do that, we will continue to leave our doors open and continue to grow.
And before we go back to Julie to learn even more about Liverpool, George, you've come to love Liverpool, is that right? I know you're a Liverpool football fan, but you've come to love the city itself.
You just turned off half of the listeners, I think. Yeah.
Frank's not here, isn't it, Simon?
That's right.
Frank would be here if Everton was still top. He would be here, but he's not. But I've worn blue for him.
Say no more than that. Yeah. I am a Liverpool supporter. I don't know. I mean, and this has been from the 70s. So I grew up, watching, I suppose, the likes of Ian St. John, Super Sub, Steve Highway. It sort of worked through from there, obviously, and the late Ray Clements as well. But I don't know, the people here, there is an affinity with the people here. It is, it's supposed to be one of the friendliest cities, and that's certainly been my experience over the last 5 years. It's very difficult for a Londoner initially because, initially people just, came up to you and started talking. It's unusual, it's an unusual concept in London. But I think that I've thoroughly enjoyed the last 5 years of being part of the growth that we've seen in the region. And as I say, there's a continuing opportunity for us to build on that. There are other reasons why, obviously we moved to Liverpool. The great transport links here as well. Easy to get into London for the commute, so I can be in London within a couple of hours. The M62 is just up the road, so that links into the M6, etc., etc. There's a great sense of innovation here as well, and lots of startups. Obviously, pre-pandemic, we'll have to see what happens as we come out the other side. But I think there is definitely an appetite for people to better themselves in Liverpool and do well, and we've seen that. We've grown significantly since opening our first office here. So. And the lifestyle again has been really enjoyable for me. The fact that you have access to lots of good bars, restaurants. I love also the countryside, so the Wirral outside of Liverpool. The beaches are just up the road, Crosby, Formby. It's a great place to live, I think, and also to do business.
Very good. And Julie, I think I'm right in saying you're a Liverpudlian. Is that right? Yeah. And it's a very proud city, isn't it, Liverpool? So there's a lot to celebrate there, isn't there?
There's huge things to celebrate. I mean, just touching on what George was saying in terms of, obviously, I'm very biased. I'm a Scouser. I was born in the Dingle, grew up in Liverpool, went to university in Liverpool. Done business in Liverpool for 30 plus years, and all my school friends, etc. My social life revolves around Liverpool predominantly. So it's also got, in terms of the Excello model, just sort of finishing on that, it's got a huge sort of professional services, a very high quality professional services community. Your lawyers, your accountants, your other professionals, we could name them all, but I find, having done business in other cities, I find that there's a warmth in that community. I've always said about Liverpool, and I think I said this to George when I first met him, other people want you to do well. There's no sort of jealousy about other people's success. There's a celebration of success. And I find, and one of the things I've said when people ask me about Liverpool is, I think the fact historically and somewhere in its fabric, the fact that it's a port, it opens its arms, it welcomes people in from outside, it makes them feel at home. As you say, it's diverse, it's cultural, it's just, I can't say enough good things about it, really. So Yeah, but sorry, what was your original question? I'm waffling on a bit.
I think that's a good point. I think the other thing, Simon, is the ease within which you can do business within Liverpool, which I think was what Julie was touching on there. My experience is that, you know, walking around the city, it's quite easy to bump into people that you know who are willing to have a conversation with you about business, are willing to actually stop and have a coffee. You know, if you bump into somebody else, they've got time for you, which is very different, I think, in other cities. My experience of London, everybody's rushing around at that pace, whereas there is that difference here, and people are very open. You can have an insightful discussion about business and your objectives. So that's been my sense, I think.
It is interesting. I'm based in London as well, though you wouldn't think it from the accent. Being a northerner in London, it does take some adjusting to London's sort of atmosphere and attitude, where you can't speak to strangers, whereas in the north of England, we would speak to strangers, you know, at every opportunity. It is peculiar. I must explain to some listeners, Frank McKenna, our chief executive, is a big Everton fan, isn't he? And that's what we were alluding to earlier. But what are the rivalries like, Julie, in the city in terms of Everton and Liverpool? I'm genuinely curious.
Well, people will jump on me for saying this, because people always jump on me for saying this, but I would never want Everton to get relegated, because that would be bad for the city. I think the fact that in Merseyside we have 2 teams in the Premier League is, you know, it's fabulous, isn't it? Would I ever want Everton to be above us? No, absolutely not. Would I like them to be mid to bottom of the table? Honestly, yes. I didn't go near Frank at all when in the brief interlude that Everton were at the top. I just stayed away from him because you know what it's like. But knew he'd disappeared today. So it's the rivalry is within, we all know this, it is within families. I think generally it's a nice rivalry. I will have people saying, I'll have my phone's going already. With people saying, don't you know, we hate Everton and all of that, but it's good for the city to have 2 teams.
Good. And staying with you, Julie, on quite a serious note, lots of clients in hospitality. The lockdowns had a massive impact on most sectors, but if any sector suffered more than any other, it's probably hospitality. What are clients saying to you? What's your feel for what's going on?
I mean, it's been well debated, this, hasn't it? It's you know, I could repeat all the things that we've already said in some of the downtown forums and Zoom meetings that we've had, you know, especially in the hospitality sector. I think we all know what the issues are. Because I knew I was coming to speak to you today, knowing what those issues are, I did think I'd just catch up with a few people who operate out of Liverpool, or one person people who operate out of both cities, Chester and Liverpool. So I'm going to name check them just because they've been so helpful. So the last few days I've spoken to Stephen Hesker, who's Savvy Hotels, a hotel in Liverpool, one in Chester. I've spoken to Helen Bamford of Gino's. We all know and love Gino's. Great place to go in the city, obviously restaurant. Spoken to Dave Hines and Lee Lynch of Red Door. Again, have a big bar in the city centre. Also one in Chester. And I spoke to, I wanted to get the views of the feeling from a smaller operator, more of a startup. Spoken to Luke Edge of Lono Cove. He an independent bar in Chester, relatively new, with aspirations to do more in other cities. So I've tried to combine, the challenges, and they're all coming out with the same sort of things that we already know about. You know, the lack of consistency across the tiers. The very short notice they get in terms of what tier they're going to be in and how they can react to, the wastage in terms of stocking and restocking. One of the biggest comments that's coming from all of them is that who are the government consulting in the hospitality industry? All these decisions are being made by the government, and unless we're all missing something, we don't know who in the industry they're actually taking, or if they are taking any advice from the industry itself. And, Helen mentioned that, the data shows that the NHS data shows that there's 8 times more infections in schools, universities, different organisations than in hospitality. And, again, the Red Door guys are saying the industry itself is heavily regulated already. It's licensed. So there already has to be that safety, and good operators, we're already getting that right. And they've all since spent a fortune on safety measures to make it even better. But they're still being told that they can't open when there's no real, as far as I'm aware, no real evidence that infections are increasing there. So, the other themes are, there's the longer term of it all, and we could talk about this for hours, but everybody feels that there's no real appreciation of by the government and by all of us possibly about the actual huge impact of this industry being on its knees. Even Dave Hines mentioned, and things we need to think about, and the government need to think about, that this industry contributes millions to the public purse in terms of the taxes it pays. It employs tens of thousands of people. In Liverpool alone, I think there's 50,000 employed in hospitality. The Liverpool Hospitality Association wrote actually to the Liverpool City. They wrote an open letter to the Liverpool City region in October. And I think everyone should read that, just because it kind of puts it in context, the massive impact it's going to have. Lots of frustrations. I've got a list of them, but I could read them out, but we'd be here for hours.
Yeah, I get it. George, you presumably have an even broader perspective than just Liverpool. What's your take on it? What could the government be doing? And what?
I think Julie's sort of touched on all of the main points that apply across the hospitality sector. I think there's a report that was it 750,000 jobs may be lost by Feb in the hospitality and pub sector without further government support. And I think the biggest issue is the long term. As Julia's touched on, I mean, most of the initiatives that we've seen come out of the government have been short to medium term, and it's what strategies are going to be put in place long term to help that industry continue to enable them to open their doors. I was going to say flourish, but just continue to trade. So that statistic is pretty worrying across the industry. So I think there needs to be, for example, a better government grant system, a long-term grant system. I know from talking to some of our clients, one of the big issues for them are things like rents, and the implications for those businesses having to continue to pay rents during this period. Yes, obviously there's a furlough scheme, but that's only one part, that's only one component. So I think it'd be interesting to see what tier, for example, Liverpool end up in come Thursday. Boris spoke very positively about Liverpool on Monday. So, hopefully that's an indication of a lower tier, but we'll have to see. And I think, again, to re-emphasize what Julie said, the planning side of things, I think for any business, what we want to know is what are we dealing with? What are the cards? And I think, this government, it's quite intriguing for me to see that what we hear and what we understand comes out of the press first before it comes out of the government or the Prime Minister. And it's just a very odd way of communicating with businesses. So I think better better communication to enable people to or businesses to plan, I think is quite important. So I mean, I think those are, you know, those are the sort of the two big areas for me. It's a long-term strategy. I mean, I think one thing I would say, my experience of personal experience of Liverpool, I have been to a number of local bars, restaurants, hostilities. So well, yeah, exactly. So you know what I've witnessed is businesses who do understand the rules and regulations. They're very particular about, you know, social distancing, and you know, these guys and girls have shown themselves to be able to adapt. They've shown themselves a certain amount of resilience and agility against quite difficult backdrop. And it seems to me, therefore, that, you know, the hospitality industry is being unfairly targeted as a result. When you think not only have they been shown their ability to be resilient and to think quickly and adapt, you know, they've been denied, you know, the ability to continue to trade out of this. So for me, that is a real difficulty that I have with the sort of the policies that we're seeing at this point in time. I don't, just a final point, I don't actually get the connection, I think Julie touched on this, the connection between the data and its association with the hospitality industry. Again, you know, I'm not aware of any data that points the finger at the hospitality industry as being culpable or responsible in any great way for the increase in infections, but they seem to be unfairly and unjustly being targeted nonetheless with the tier system. So that's unfortunate. And you know, I think that the tier system itself, you look at the tiers as we speak, and it doesn't really give the hospitality industry any, I suppose, real ability to salvage things, given, you know, the restriction on household mixing, from what I've seen. So, you know, Christmas is a time where I understand why you can't mix households at this time, but the issue is, you know, this is the time where you would expect ordinarily for the hospitality industry to see the, you know, significant part of their business and their revenue. And that's being curtailed as a result of the tier system. So I think there should be a better understanding of, you know, of the implications that the tier system is going to have on the hospitality industry. But, you know, the bigger point for me, as I said at the outset, is just the long-term strategy, which doesn't appear to be on the table or being discussed at this point in time.
And Julie, coming back to you, 2 points. First of all, the impact on other sectors, because George mentioned people being unable to pay rents. Commercial property must be devastated by the impact that hospitality is having on them. So there's a roll-on impact. So first of all, what's the impact on other sectors around hospitality? But secondly, January, I was talking to some businesses in London. They said that January for the hospitality industry is going to be truly awful because it's very quiet then anyway. What's your view on both those points?
Yeah, I think that we've touched on the same issues, and the people I spoke to were touching on the same issues, in that January, obviously a huge amount of revenue but is made in these businesses during the run up to Christmas, which actually sees them through January and February tighter times. So that won't, unless things change, that won't be there. As George touched on, they've all still mentioned the fact that the frustration is that the furlough scheme is kind of, there's a frustration with everyone I spoke to that the industry is not trusted by the government, you know, so heavily regulated but not trusted. And when changes have been made in the past to licensing, for example, people have still behaved well, and they're not being given the opportunity to behave well. So, you know, that has huge impacts on the run up to Christmas. The fact that a lot of the small bars in tier 2 now won't be able to open anyway because they don't do food. No matter how innovative they are, then the regulation will say they can't do it. You know, so it's going to have much bigger impact than I think any of us even realise. It will, you know, people mention taxi drivers, security firms, caterers, you know, the suppliers of all the products to the industry. But going, you know, even wider than that, Liverpool has a huge student presence. That those students get part-time work in the bars to fund themselves through uni. That's the way they afford to do it. So those jobs disappear, the students disappear. It's a knock-on effect there as well. That affects the city in terms of potential university numbers. Then you've got you know, professional services. You know, a lot of our clients in professional services are in hospitality. We want to support them, but you know, transactionally, there's a lot of transactions take place in the hospitality sector. A lot of them are already either cancelled or on hold. So, you know, it's massive. And then, you know, you have this, you're going to have this huge unemployment with the reduction in the taxes received from the industry, increase in having to pay benefits, increase on people losing their homes. It's huge. It's potentially huge. Yeah. And I think the frustration is that, with, again, everybody mentioned this, that there's an attitude from certain aspects of the general public of, oh, furlough, it's like an extended holiday, you know, shut your doors for a bit and you'll be fine. But it doesn't, you know, that's a drop in the ocean compared to fixed costs and loss of business. So.
Yeah, interesting. And that leads in nicely, really, George. The Chancellor of the Exchequer will stand up in Parliament in a couple of hours' time, talking about his annual spending review. What sorts of things do you think he should be saying in that? Apparently he's going to focus on jobs and job retention, but what more do you think the Chancellor can be saying and doing now at this critical time?
Well, as I mentioned before, I think there needs to be a long-term strategy for the business community, the wider business community. I mean, ultimately, well, I did hear very early on in this sort of, when the government came to power, that their focus was very much on entrepreneurs and businesses. That was their focus, because, you know, it was those businesses that were going to help grow the economy. You know, by growing businesses, obviously there is you know, there was greater tax revenue that flows out of that. So, I mean, I think as a business, you know, owner, I suppose that's the sort of area that I want to see more focus on. You know, more assistance with, as you just touched on, the unemployed and potentially what's going to happen again long term. I think it's just you know, we seem to be lurching from one initiative to another to a large extent. I don't see, you know, the longer term strategy at this point in time. And that's really what I'm sort of hopeful for. You know, obviously, you know, we're going to have to pay for all of this at some point, but you know, I think I don't really see austerity at this point in time. I think it's too early on in the cycle for that. So, you know, I think it's important that the government continue to spend, because, you know, we are pretty deep, and I don't want to use the R word, but you know, I think there is a strong danger. So, long-term thinking, and continuing to invest overall.
Yeah, now's not the time to start taxing, is it? I think keep investing and build us way back out of this awful situation. Julie, any indication in terms of what the announcement will be for Greater Liverpool, tier 2 or tier 3? Is there any talk in Liverpool about where you might end up?
Everyone I've spoken to about it, inside and outside the city, is it's awful, isn't it? That they're hopeful of tier 2. Sorry, hopeful of tier 2, and it's terrible, isn't it, that we have to hope for those restrictions. I think that the difficulty with tier 2 now for hospitality is the rule about having to serve food to be able to operate. Yeah, you know, Scousers are innovative and entrepreneurial, but they're also handcuffed by rules and regulations. So I think that's, you know, we're hoping for tier 2 because we know it won't be tier 1. So that's fingers crossed. I would be hopeful that with some lobbying that the tier could be, you know, they're saying these are in place till March, but, you know, if people can't serve food, then we've got the bars. The knock-on effect will still be on the restaurants, because the people, as Stephen said, you know, Stephen Hesketh said, the people come to Liverpool City and other cities for the whole experience. Would you just go into town for a meal and come home? You go into town when you live around Liverpool to have a meal and then a few drinks. If you can't have the few drinks, you know, it's not joined up thinking. So, you know, who knows? But you know, you'd like to think that at some point, it's difficult balance, isn't it, with you know, the what the government have to do, because they have to find the you know, we keep having to find the money to fund public services, but, you know, things like the VAT on alcohol is high. It's high for social reasons, but would it help the industry to reduce that? I'm not expecting anything like that in the short term, but there's things that could be looked at, taxation, VAT. I think importantly, and Luke Edge mentioned this, is that people who want to invest in new businesses must be given incentives to do so, particularly in hospitality, because again, the guys from Red Door were saying that they've been involved in investment structures for many years, and invested hugely in the past through living ventures, etc., into Liverpool particularly. And they were saying that they hope that the hospitality industry isn't seen as a toxic investment, whether by private investors or by lenders, because it's going to need investment. It's going to need to incentivize people to start again if they've, you know, all that experience needs to be plowed back into the economy.
That is interesting. It will be interesting to see, actually, you've made me think there about the Chancellor's last support package in terms of hospitality around Eat Out to Help Out. Always thought it's something of a gimmick. It's proved to be something that might have actually helped spread the virus at a critical time. I mean, and he's certainly had his fingers burnt from a political perspective. So I'd be curious to see what he does say later on today, to see whether he still tries to support hospitality as he did last time. I'm not sure whether he'll actively avoid it.
I think we need to be careful by saying that Eat Out to Help Out could have increased the infection rates, because there's a number of factors, aren't there? We don't really know. I mean, for example, in Liverpool, the huge influx of students in, you know, at the end of August, rates start going up in September, you know, and they're coming from all different parts of the country. The movement and migration of people from, you know, homes in one place to another, the rates of, you know, I don't think personally, I'm not an expert, but it does seem to me that rates going up so dramatically in Liverpool had to have something to do with it being a university city, and that's happened in other university cities. So Eat Out to Help Out, I think, was a great initiative, but it's much harder in winter, especially when the small and independent bars have to now have a food offering.
Yeah, you make a good point there, Julie. It may not have spread the virus, but he's had that accusation thrown at him from and that might make him cautious about any other gimmicks or initiatives he comes up with in terms of hospitality. It'll be interesting to see. But George, on a lighter note, as we come towards the end, we gradually motoring into the festive season. Me and my 10 and 12-year-old boys put the Christmas tree up last weekend, which is earlier than I would normally do. But we're all desperate for a bit of fun and happiness, I think. Well, have you any plans for the festive season?
Well, Simon, interesting, because normally I would visit all of the offices to take part in the Christmas festivities. That unfortunately it's not going to happen this year. Although with 8 offices now, I think probably will do my liver a great deal of good. No, the plan is it's my birthday also on Boxing Day, so the plan is to be with and Julie's as well, isn't it? It's around Christmas. Yeah, the plan is really to be with family and friends this time of year. I think one of the things the pandemic has done is make people realise the importance of relationships.
Yes.
And you know, who better to spend it with than loved ones and close ones. So that's what I'll be doing, and hopefully getting some R&R, taking some downtime, let's say, and see what other Christmas brings.
And Julie, is it your birthday? Is your birthday coming up as well? I should tell anybody who's watching that we're all 54, I think I'm right in saying.
I told you not to tell anyone.
Sorry, I do apologise. You don't look it though. Me and George do, that's the difference.
Must be 80. So yeah, it's my birthday coming up. I'm not bothered about my birthday really. I've had so many of them, it's just another one. In terms of Christmas, I've got one of those families that huge celebrations all over the festive period. So I've had murder with my mother this morning because we were all saying, you know, we don't think the traditional Christmas dinner is a good idea. Personal challenges are, I've got a son who works in hospitality, I've got another son at university. My mum is, you know, she's great, but, you know, we need to keep her safe. Same with my stepdad, and then the sister with the little one. So all that going on. And so we decided this morning, so I'm glad you asked the question, that we're going to have a Christmas barbecue. We're going to get a gazebo, have turkey burgers, stand outside, put the gazebo up in the garden, and do it that way, just to keep. It's a bit different. It's an opportunity to do something. We're trying to be positive, opportunity to do something different. Socially distant presents opening, and then probably a big long walk on Boxing Day, and take flasks of mulled wine, and just hopefully the weather will be kind to us. So a bit different.
Sounds like an excellent idea, actually. Let me finish by asking both of you, George first, what's your happy wish for 2021? What you're hoping for in 2021?
Gosh, it's been a really, from a personal perspective for me, it's been a difficult year, brought about by various things such as the pandemic. But for 2020, you know, I think it's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? It's the you know, as you just touched on, you know, I'll be 55 in a you know, about 4 weeks time or so. So you know, I think health is key, keeping healthy. But I think, you know, other than that, it's obviously to see what happens with the vaccine on a more wider basis, or the vaccines, I should say, and hopefully that begins to sort of bring about a sense of normality. It'd be great if, you know, come Easter, we could begin to get back to normal and focus on the things that are important to us. So that's really what I'm looking for, you know, health, happiness, and hopefully, as I say, you know, the sort of the magic wand that we all hope the vaccines will be.
Yeah, good. Normality. Julie, avoiding Liverpool Football Club in your answer. What's your happiness wish for 2021?
Happiness to half of the city. Yeah, avoiding football. My health has to be the biggest one for me. A healthy population and security. People are feeling very insecure for so many reasons at the moment. So they're my biggest wishes to everyone for the next 12 months. Good health and security.
Thank you both, George, Julie. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thanks, Simon.
Enjoyed it too. Thank you.
Bye.